Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Bradenton City Council meeting, 8:30 a.m., Wednesday, August 9th, 2023, at our City Hall Council Chambers. At this time, we're going to do our invocation and prayer. I'm going to ask lead pastor Sam Rainier with West Bradenton Baptist Church to come forward. Good morning, sir. Please stand.
If you will all join me. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for our city. Lord, I ask for your goodness to shine upon this city, upon our homes. Lord, I lift up our mayor. I lift up everyone who serves on this council. Lord, we ask for your blessings, not only in this room, but on every home in Bradenton, because it's healthy homes that will make a healthy community. And so, Lord, I just thank you for the opportunity to be here. Lord, I pray that your goodness will shine today. And it's in your Son's name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join all veterans in the audience with the prayer, or the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk.
We do not have any proclamations or presentations this morning.
Okay, so at this time, we'll go to citizen comment. And citizen comment will be accepted during the citizen comment portion of the meeting on any non-agenda items. Agenda items, future agenda items, or topics of relevance to the city. Comments will be accepted on the public hearings at the appropriate time. So I have call up first Mike Meehan, if you please state your name and address. And you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Mike Meehan, Manatee County. Talking on the subject of the causeway. I think you can use both objective and subjective criteria to evaluate the future of the for-profit businesses operating on the causeway. An example of an objective criteria would be photographic evidence of seagrass destruction caused by the horses, or the finding that 67% of the time the water quality is moderate to poor on the north side of the bay. And you can also use subjective criteria like the causeway's designation as a Florida Scenic Highway. To formulate your opinion, and I quote from the Florida Scenic Highway literature, "Public roads designated as scenic highways are intended to preserve, maintain, and protect a part of Florida's cultural, historical, and scenic routes for vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian travel." There's no mention of jet skis or horseback riding companies. And then ask yourself the question, does someone who sets up a golf cart sales lot on the north side of the causeway violate the subjective criteria? Clearly they do, and I'm glad the city is taking proactive steps to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Similarly, does a series of horse trailers lined up horizontally to the highway, which impede parking and block views of the water, give off a scenic highway vibe, or are they more reminiscent of a truck rest stop on the interstate? Similar logic applies to the festoon banner-waving jet ski companies with their gas cans situated on or near the shoreline. Is that a scenic highway vibe, or more like an aquatic version of the Red Barn? In conclusion, I think the City Council would do well to consider both objective and subjective criteria in formulating a decision as to whether they favor a commercial or a scenic highway Palmasola Causeway. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Peter Fitzgerald. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Pete Fitzgerald. I live at 210 3rd Street West in Bradenton. One of the things
So
we
if you
want-
get a little closer to the microphone,
Okay.
so.
One of the things we wanted to discuss just briefly this morning was the homeless situation down on the Riverwalk. We live in a Main Street condo, which is closest to the Riverwalk, right by lamppost number 21, right by the Marriott. And we've been there for about 3 years, and we have more and more problems with the homeless down there. Sergeant Palant and Officer McNeil are helping us a lot, but they're undermanned, and we find, because we live so close to the pavilion there, that we see a lot of activity that, you know, you wouldn't even, really graphic activity on a regular basis. And I'm not talking about the homeless people who really are homeless. I'm talking about the 10% of people who've embraced that lifestyle. And they're getting more emboldened about it, daytime and nighttime. There are 2 gathering points for them, primarily the 2 pavilions down by the Marriott and also by the skateboard park. And they're, in the daytime, they thin out, and they position themselves along the Riverwalk by the water, and individually or in 2s on the benches along the Riverwalk. At nighttime, it's a different story. Anytime from probably 11 to 4 o'clock in the morning, they come out in force. And we see everything. We see drug deals, we see drug use. These people are pretty resourceful. They all carry cell phones, all but probably about 2 of them. There's probably about 8 to 10 of them. They carry cell phones, they communicate with each other. They're not panhandling, but they're street smart and they know what they're doing. They're embracing this lifestyle. Most of the residents don't even want to sit down there during the daytime. And the officers try to their hands are tied pretty much, because all they can do is just tap them and wake them up and tell them to move on. And then 15 minutes later, they're there again. But the activity at night is getting pretty bad. We have a large oak tree right in front of our lanai, and we're the closest to that oak tree. And they're even climbing up the oak trees, stashing what we think are drugs and stuff like that, and also in the moat area in front of the condominium. So we just wanted to bring that to your attention, because we've been there for almost 3 years now, and it's just getting worse. And you know, those are the 2 areas that really need some supervision, you know, and just help from the local people. You know, so appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Kathy Fitzgerald. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Kathy Fitzgerald. I live at 210 3rd Street West. That was my husband, Peter, in the Main Street condo, right next to the Courtyard Marriott, lamppost 21, right in front of my living room window. Anyway, what I wanted, 2 things actually. Number 1 is, we know that there had the underwiring for the cameras. My main thing is, when are these cameras going to be installed? Because that would alleviate a lot of the problems, because it would document, validate, and a quicker response for the police department if these cameras were up and monitored. And like, I do want to, real quick before I forget, I do want to tell you, Officer Palant, and especially Sergeant Palant and Officer McNeil, we never want to lose these people to another city or another department. They are fabulous. Officer McNeil is well-spoken, well-groomed. She's a no-nonsense officer from Chicago. You probably know her background. But we don't want to lose good officers like that. And like my husband said, there are people who are homeless. We all could be homeless to unfortunate circumstances. But there are a lot of them who choose this lifestyle. And I'm not going to go into all the things that I've seen. But the cameras are actually, please, just hook them. I know you're going to expand on the Riverwalk, and it's a beautiful place to live. But we need to put the cameras in now, as ASAP, please, because it takes away from us having to continually call when there's a problem and go through, state your name, do you want to make a report, blah, blah, blah. Please, put them up to where they can be put now. That way, when it is fully, done, the program for the cameras, You can get the hot spots now, and you don't have to worry about it at one time and be overwhelmed for these officers. Their hands are tied, because all they do is get them to move along, and they do come back. And we have, I don't know, and I'm not making light of this when I say this, please excuse me, I don't want to offend anybody, but is there a mental illness facility? Because we have so many, right now especially, mentally ill people screaming and yelling in people's faces. I called the police last week on a woman who was getting this close in people's faces, and they were, trying to get around her. And they said they can't do anything. The officers came down. Well, she came back to the pavilion more animated than ever, screaming and yelling. I called back, and the dispatch lady told me, she said, if she's not a threat to herself or the community, there's nothing that we can do. And I said, well, she's getting in people's more than their personal space, and some people have children. They're walking out on the grass area. And I said, I'll tell you what, it made me upset, especially seeing families walk by. I said, I'll tell you what, when she knocks somebody's lights out and they're bleeding,
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we have Ed Higgins. Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Ed Higgins, and my wife and I reside at the same condominium, Main Street condominium on Riverwalk. And I sent each of you an email yesterday via Tamara, and I appreciate her help. So I don't need to take much time this morning. I just wanted to bring some, really, hopefully some solutions to the problems that the Fitzgeralds are talking about, because it's ongoing all the time. And as I mentioned in my email yesterday, I feel that if we do some simple modifications, redesign to the 4 shelters down by our condominium in Marriott, specifically making it so that the homeless can't lay down and sleep and camp out in those shelters, by simply putting up some support rails, making it like a 4-seater instead of a long 8 or 9-seater. There are 2 lounge benches in those shelters. If you could simply cut the ends of those lounge benches off so they become seats and not a long sleeping lounge, that would help greatly. The other thing is to, and I think this is really important, is to simply close the shelters at night during like 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. To everybody, but and also put signs in each shelter that would indicate that they are closed from 11 to 6 and trespass is enforced. That's important for law enforcement. But I think these simple designs will really help, because the problems are ongoing. As these folks stated, we see all kinds of things all the time. I'll put this photo up real quick. I guess, I don't know how to do this.
Set it on there. Yes, right there.
If you could turn it.
All right, this way maybe?
Yes,
Perfect.
perfect.
Yep.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, you can see the condominium building in the back. That's Main Street. It's right on Riverwalk. It's probably the closest condominium to Riverwalk, within 50 feet of these shelters. And that bench, those benches are great. You can see the center rails. They have bars in them, like at the airports. That's what I'm talking about on the shelter wooden benches. Rails just like that. The city did come in recently and put 1 rail in each shelter, but they're open, and the homeless just put their legs and arms and went right through them. So they need to be closed. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right, so that's all the citizen comment I have. I'm just going to start out. We did get your email yesterday and read through it, and I did look when you talked. Go ahead, sit down. We're just in general comment. Thank you. But I saw our Public Works Director's eyes pop up talking about some of that. One of the things when the Riverwalk was designed was just before I got on the council, but obviously it's a linear park. There's a lot of things that happen, and I know there's been a lot of discussion over the time what legally things we can do if it stays open 24/7. and what can not happen and happen. So I think there's a chance, and I'm not speaking for the whole council, but I think it's something we all would probably agree on. There's a chance to reevaluate some of those areas and really try to think, because don't think that obviously you're the only ones in the homeless community situations happening. It's all over. That's probably the most emails I get now, talking to people. Some people are very reasonable, like you folks. Some send very negative emails and, all the things. And as everybody knows here, I'm a phone call guy. So I get a phone call with him and talked to a gentleman the other day, and he was very aggressive with me. And I asked him, I said, well, what's your solutions? What do you have any ideas? And he had none. So I was like, we're trying this. Our officers are great officers. We're doing a lot to try to work to maintain the younger officers becoming older officers with us. So there's a lot of things we're doing that are proactive, and there's some things that our hands are tied because of legal rights and things that go on, and we are working an ordinance right now to do some of the other things. The mental health is the biggest part of it. I don't know if you saw the county meeting yesterday, but they're talking about the shelter, or their veterans complex over off of Cortez Road, and it got into the point where the previous acting administrator and veterans coordinator said that we've got 150 homeless veterans possibly in Manatee County, but 90% of them, that's what they want to be. It's not that they, even if we had 150 beds, probably only a small portion would get into it. So this is an issue that we're addressing aggressively with administrative-wise, with community-wide. We've had joint meetings with the school board, the county, and saying, what can we do? Obviously Bradenton is the central core where it's a little bit more attractive and at times, but I think it's important to look at those options and say, okay, what can we do legally? What can we do ethically and morally? But what can we do to make this a global solution to Manatee County? And I think you're going to see some things over the next couple months that will make a difference. The cameras, I know that's something we've been working on. The first ones didn't work the way we want it. Now I know they're putting the wires in, so we'll have to get an update on that as time goes on. I know the supply chain and everything is difficult, but I agree with you on the cameras. And we've got in our new police station, we basically got grant money from the federal government to put into our new police station a real-time crime center, which will actually help us. So some of that stuff, again, that's down the road, but we still got to do it now. But this is every day we talk about this. So that's important. And then I'll let anybody else on the council if they want to make any comments to that. And then before I move on to the causeway. Okay, Councilman Kramer.
We all know homelessness is not a crime, but sometimes the activities, as you were able to video, are indicating criminal activity. That said, I think anything we do going forward, Sergeant Plant in the back, who's got the kudos, I believe is still certified in crime prevention through environmental design, which I just got the nod from him. So I'd ask that he be sort of brought on board. I'm assuming that was done when the Riverwalk was first constructed, but I'd certainly say that probably needs a refresh now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Coker?
Yeah, a couple things. First off, I was part of the CRA at that point when we did the Riverwalk. I can't say that the environmental design part was really a big discussion. It could have been at different levels that I wasn't part of. But I do know that when we upped the funding for it. We bonded that project just to ensure that security, people felt safe there. That was priority for us. So that's why we budgeted for extra law enforcement officers and also for the cameras, the original cameras that I guess are not working. So we share your concerns and definitely want to see that because we have invested a lot of tax dollars into that park and we want to make sure that we protect it. As far as I remember at the time there was discussion about park hours, especially with regard, and we decided not to do it. I don't truly remember what that was. I don't know if that would, I would like to know law enforcement's ideas on that, if it would help them trespass people or anything like that. But maybe that's something we need to look at again. But I remember specifically making that decision not to close the park. And I don't remember why we did it, but it might be worth looking into again. Also, I get a lot of calls about the causeway. We have had multiple water experts come here and tell us that the horses are not a source of an issue there. So I just want to keep reiterating that the professional water experts have told us that. With regard, I of course, you know, selling golf carts on the causeway is not okay. We have an ordinance in place, and I think where we're going to need to is enforcement between, you know, BPD and code enforcement. We're going to have to step it up out there because things are getting a little bit wild. But with regard to the horses and the stand-up paddleboard people, I mean, they're small businesses, they're entrepreneurs. And I mean, there's good stuff going on out there. People are enjoying it. And I just don't feel like government needs to stand on their back. I mean, that's the American dream, is being able to come here. Those people are working hard, sitting in that sun all day long. So I don't want to step on their backs. I want to make sure they're following the rules, and we want everyone to be safe out there. But I just am frustrated with the calls to get rid of them, because if we get rid of them there, the problems that we're having on the Riverwalk are going to definitely be there on the causeway, because we know what it was like before all this. I mean, that was a problem. Homelessness and encampments and sleeping in the mangroves was a problem out there. So I just have to weigh in on that.
Thank you. Ms. Moore?
I was just going to reiterate, I was able to talk with Ms. Fitzgerald yesterday, and I was happy to hear the accolades for Officer McNeil and Sergeant Pillow. I was going to note that, and I don't know, you know, for notice purposes, I know we can't discuss it, but it is on the CRA meeting agenda this afternoon to talk about an additional case manager role within our community policing. So that is something that we technically can't talk about right now, but this afternoon there will be a discussion about that. And I was also just going to note that on our consent agenda is the real-time crime, and that links to cameras and has a lot of technology that I think will assist the police department once we get the cameras operating. And so I was just going to mention that, and, you know, I mean, everyone knows, this was going to be part of my council report, it's a national problem with the homeless. The county task force does have a representative from Centerstone, which I believe is a mental health organization, so they're at least part of the discussion. And permanent and temporary housing is going to be something that the task force is focusing on to try to alleviate that. And that was it. Everyone,
Right.
it's on everyone's mind.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Coachman?
Thank you. Well, with all that said, I just simply want to say thank you to all the citizens that came up on both topics to share your concerns. As you hear, it's in the works. We want a win-win, you know, as best as possible. So just thank you, and I'm glad that someone spoke up and recognized our wonderful Bradenton Police Department as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barnaby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I was sitting up here before, we had the community come forward and want to have homeless services brought to the front of our agendas. And we did that, and we were able to get money not only locally, but also from the state. Thank you, Senator Galvano. Appreciated that very much. But it's truly one of the, if you build it, they will come things. And we're getting overwhelmed. Our services are getting overwhelmed at this point. The United States Supreme Court says loitering is not a crime. So you can't arrest someone for just being somewhere. And if someone does not want to accept help, if they don't want to partake of the community services, you can't force them to. So we keep working on this. We keep trying to find ways to help the individuals that truly want to have help. But I know from my past experience with the Suncoast Partnership to End Homelessness, there are individuals that truly want to live outdoors, don't want to follow any rules or guidelines. Many of them are mentally ill. Many of them have substance abuse issues. And there we have it. So I think what you are seeing is that everyone up here truly wants to help those that want to get help. I'm not sure what we do with those that are refusing to get help. Having been a native here, I remember a previous sheriff back in the 50s when we would have what was called hobos show up in our community. That sheriff would take whatever money was in the petty cash and buy them a bus ticket someplace else, saying, if you go up to Marion County, or if you go up to Pinellas County, so-and-so's the sheriff there. He's a nice man. I'm an SOB. Don't come back here. That's exactly what was done. And I actually think because we have some of the services we have, we're having some of our neighboring communities send us their problem rather than trying to deal with it themselves. So I'm just going to stop talking now, having vented my spleen a little bit.
And bringing us back to the 50s
Yes,
from memory. So no, it's we know it's an issue that we have to deal with every day, and it's something that I think that every one of us in this room has a heart to try to help people. But unfortunately, sometimes the city of Bradenton has become the core for our county as well as other surrounding counties. So I think, it's going to take a village, take time, and, time is not always what people want to hear, but I believe within the next, cycle of things happening, months, there could be opportunity for us to meet what's within the requirements of the law, but do what's right to help people. So I think there's opportunity there. So I think everyone had a chance to comment. We appreciate everyone coming in on citizen comment, and we encourage it, in a cordial and respectful way, and that sometimes hasn't happened in the past, but I think we're working towards that with a great council and administration, staff, and great citizens. So thank you. Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and staff is requesting approval of items A through L.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 5.
Yes.
1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4.
Yes.
Okay, approved 5-0. Madam Clerk?
At this time, I'd like to administer the oath. Anyone wishing to address City Council during the following public hearings will please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and representations which you are about to present to this board will be truthful and accurate? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is second reading and public hearing for ordinance 4010, an ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, vacating a portion of a 16-foot alley as shown in the plat of DR J.C. Pelotes Edition to the Town of Manatee subdivision, recorded in Book 1, page 77 of the Public Records of Manatee County, Florida, generally located east of 23rd Street East between Manatee Avenue East and 3rd Avenue East, providing for recordation in the official records, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Greg DeLong, Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development. Good to see everyone this morning. You have in front of you this morning a case to vacate a portion of an alley, as mentioned in the title. It is a 16-foot portion, approximately 1,470 square feet in size. It is located between 2306 3rd Avenue East and 403 23rd Street East. The proposed vacation vacates the remaining portion of an alleyway that was previously vacated back in 2007. If approved, the requested portion of the alley right-of-way will transfer the ownership to Manatee Commons LLC, since they own both sides of the adjacent properties. Proposed vacation will better align the adjacent properties for future redevelopment. Here is a location map. As you can see, off to the east of the property, that is where the former vacation occurred back in 2007. So we're really just talking about this little tiny portion over here on the far west side of it. Here is the zoning map. As you can see, it is UCC zoning, which is Urban Commercial Corridor. Future land use is the same, Urban Commercial Corridor. Here is a survey map that was submitted as part of the application. And here's just some existing conditions we took. These photos were taken back for the Planning Commission meeting, which took place back in, I believe, May. And here's some more photos looking east, looking northeast. Section 2.27 of the land use regulations has some key points that need to be reviewed as part of an alley vacation or easement vacation. The key points, this one is the vacation will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare or convenience, and that no public or private utilities utilizing the right-of-way as demonstrated by letters of verification were submitted with the application. The applicant did submit letters from all utility companies. Also included in that stack of letters was a letter from our Public Works Department. So everything was good and clear on that. So staff did recommend back at the Planning Commission level and at this level that the case RV 23.1781 be approved with no stipulations. And as you can see back in the Planning Commission meeting, and I did say May, but it was June 21st, seems like ages ago, they did vote 5-0 to recommend approval of the same case with no stipulations. You have any questions for me?
Any questions? Hearing none, is there
Yeah, the applicant is here if you have any questions for them.
any questions for the applicant?
I might.
Okay, all right, so come forward. Please state your name and address for the record. And you have been sworn.
I have been sworn. Good morning. My name is Lynn Burnett, LTA Engineers, on behalf of the applicant. And you need address as well?
Yes, please.
Office address 5840 26th Street West, Bradenton, Florida.
Thank you. Ms. Moore?
It is clear to me that there's no legal basis for not agreeing to the vacation. There's also no legal basis to dictate what the applicant intends to do with the parcel. But as someone who lives directly behind this parcel, I would like to convey to the applicant that it is my hope, my sincere hope, that they do some extensive landscaping and consider when they're designing it that just a few blocks away is going to be the new fire department that is supposed to be the gateway into the city. And I'll just leave it at that. I hope that they don't just throw up a big block, no windows.
Duly noted, and that is of their concern as well. The property owners, basically it's the same ownership that has been in existence since 2007 and actually prior. They've just been very patient, waiting to be able to acquire the additional parcels to do the right sort of a development in there. And I think that your concerns are heard and definitely will be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just want to
Oh,
make,
Ms. Coachman, yes.
save as many trees as you can. They're beautiful.
Yes, as a out-of-the-box design engineer, that definitely was also a major focus of the design, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, no other questions. We'll go to the public hearing. Does anybody wish to speak? Does anyone wish to speak? Does anyone wish to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, I don't have my glasses on. Motion to approve an ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, vacating a portion of a 16-foot alley as shown in the plat of DRJC Pelotes addition to Manatee subdivision recorded in book.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Nope.
I heard Mrs. Moore. All right. Now, any other discussion? Please, in the audience, there's some noise that we can hear up here. At this time, we'll start the vote in Ward 1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5.
Yes.
Carries 5-0. Madam Clerk.
The next item on the agenda is ordinance 4012, second reading and public hearing. An ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, providing for an amendment to the City of Bradenton Land Use Atlas, changing zoning from T5 Urban Center to SD Special District for properties located at 101 and 113 Fifth Avenue Drive East and a portion of 102 and the entirety of 120 Manatee Avenue West. More particularly described in Attachment Exhibit A, providing for applicability, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
All right. We did give a full presentation at the last meeting. If you would want me to review it again, that's fine. Staff did recommend denial on this. Planning Commission did recommend approval with a vote of 4-1. So, if you have any additional questions
other
for me, otherwise I'll
questions
turn
for
it over to the
Mr.
applicant.
Not, if we have the applicant come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council. And as Mr. DeLong just said, we did have a full presentation last time, and I think you're very familiar with this particular parcel, what we went through on the comp plan, and what the request is here today. What I did want to highlight for you this morning is, based on your inquiry, we went back, we huddled, we looked at the statistical traffic patterns that the facility like we are going to propose would generate. And there's some interesting facts that I would share. First of all, these are neighborhood facilities. They're not destination facilities. And that may account for the number that you're seeing. And so the traffic generated is generally local. Secondly, the peak hours, or I'll start with the least peak hours, are before work in the morning or after work. So the rush hour patterns are really very sparse and not heavy. You'll see an increase during the lunch hour. You'll see throughout the day people who are not working will come in at different points, but Saturday and Sunday is a time when people want to go and use these facilities. What has been drafted and that will be proposed in terms of the site plan has a storage lane that goes way beyond anything that we've seen from a peak, and we believe that it will certainly handle whatever traffic, even on the Saturday, Sundays, that come in. Right now, administratively, a movie theater can go in there, a restaurant can go in there, a parking garage could go in there. So if you're looking at impacts and intensity, you currently allow certain facilities administratively that would have a higher intensity to go in there. And again, we're asking for the opportunity to present an application, to work with your staff to make sure that however it's landscaped, how it's designed, and that it's compatible with the neighborhood, compatible with the unique aspect of this little section, and ultimately changes the landscape from, speaking of homeless, homeless gathering to a going concern. Thank you.
Questions? Ms. Moore?
I don't have any
Okay.
questions. I have comments.
Okay, so let's get to, I'd like to ask Mr. DeLong to come back up. The one question that Mr. Galvano brought up was about the intensity of the traffic with other businesses. So is that a correct statement that he made, that a movie theater, other businesses can go on there? And
Yeah, let me pull up.
yeah, because I think that's an important issue when you're looking through things to say, traffic and opportunity. And I think one of the most important issues we heard is, can it help fix some of the issues? Because the only comments I got was about the Starbucks. Is it going to help that traffic flow?
Yes.
Sure, before that, yes.
We talk with the folks too, and we're prepared to help with directional signs to lessen the impact of Starbucks. And that's a commitment we'll make to the city.
Because I think that's another thing that we've heard of when the Starbucks can stack 3 or 4 cars and the rest of them are in the roadway on 301. So anything we do there, we've got to try to fix that.
Yeah, so currently it's zone T5, and I apologize.
Yeah, like we could see that.
I know, exactly.
Even with
I
good
know.
eyes.
So let me zoom in a little bit here, see if it works.
Yeah. Just tell us
I'll
what it
just switch
says.
schools, or switch screens. Yeah, let me kind of play around with this a little bit here.
Yeah, we can see that a little bit.
There you go. So we'll just kind of run down. So right now it is T5. So anything you see with a P is a permitted use by right. So as you can see, you have housing, lodging, offices, you have retail, anything with an SU would be a special use, which would come before Planning Commission and also City Council. Here's some civic uses, as you can see. Movie theaters are permitted, as Mr. Caldana said, permitted by right. You also have museums, some entertainment things are special use. So that is one side of the list. And let's just scroll over here to the other side here. And I'll work my way from the bottom up. Well, let me go back from the top down. So you can see the T5 category here. It's a little more limited. As you saw before, the auto-oriented uses were a little more limited. Most of them were special use. Here's some civic things like fire stations, police stations are permitted, cemetery special use, hospital special use. So this is kind of just a general list of everything in the T5 that could currently go there, either as a permitted use by right or a special use. Now, what you see with the SD category, which is what they are requesting, I know they're proposing a car wash, but if the car wash did not go in and the zoning is approved, anything in this SD category could also go in. So you need to also consider that too. I know their intent is for the car wash, and I'm sure they'll pull that project off, but should it fail or it goes out of business, any of these other uses in the SD could go in the future. So we're not tying it just to a car wash. So it's something just to keep in mind as you're looking at this. I always tell everyone, look at it as a clean palette. So anything in that zoning district could technically go in by right if the zonings are occurred. The only time you really can control a use type is if you do a plan development, and that's where you list the types of uses you want. So, any other questions for me? I know it's kind of scrolling erratically there on the screen, and I apologize for that.
Immediate questions right now, and we can open it to the public and come back to the council. Anything else?
I don't have any questions. I have comments.
Okay, so go ahead.
But we can
Yeah.
open it to public comment first if you want.
Well, go ahead now, because that may change the public comment
Okay.
too.
I agree with Mr. DeLong's point that I just want to make sure that we understand that the choice that we're making is to permit anything in that prohibited for the future until it is rezoned in some manner. In my opinion, the choice is not vacant eyesore, homeless camp, or automotive services. There are a myriad of ways in which the applicant could develop the property, and I would like to encourage them to think a little more creatively, think outside the box. I don't think that we're in a position of time anymore where we have to encourage any development. I think that we have the luxury of being a little more pointed. In my opinion, changing this to automotive is contrary to our stated objectives of multimodal transportation, encouraging multimodal transportation and walkability. I agree that that intersection is problematic. The Starbucks drive-through is problematic. But just this past weekend, I saw a family trying to cross that road. Across the street is an apartment complex, so there are human beings in that area. And I don't think we have to sacrifice. I don't think we have to go backward in those stated objectives in the interest of making sure that there's not homeless people there. That is my opinion. I think that it would be short-sighted to approve this now at a time when we're discussing with MPO as far as transportation in that area. And like I said, our stated objectives. I think we can be more pointed here and ask the applicant to consider a development that is in line with its current zoning.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Well, I guess I had a question, and this might be for Mr. Galvano. I kind of remember a little bit of discussion, but I'm not clear. Why, I mean, I don't like telling a homeowner or a property owner that they can't do with their property. And is there a reason why we're not just doing a special use permit for the car wash rather than the rezone? I can't remember why we did that. I apologize.
Hi, Kyle Grimes with Grimes Galvano have been sworn. The car washes are not listed as a special use under that T5 district. So when we did the comp plan amendment to allow for car washes and other automotive uses in this area, the code hadn't caught up with the comp plan provision. And so right now, the only avenue to get that is to go SD.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Any other questions before we go to public comment? All right, at this time, we'll open up the public comment. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? We'll close the public comment. Any final staff or applicant discussion?
I just wanted to highlight again that the reason we're moving from the T5 is the objectives of this walkability, this like true downtown strolling down the sidewalk type of atmosphere. It's not practical or reasonable. And so we went to the SD, as Mr. Grimes explained, because when we did the comp plan amendment, a very specific comp plan amendment that limits it to this certain area, we didn't have a code provision to catch up with it.
Thank you. Any other council comments on this?
I was just gonna, if I may.
Sure.
I was going to speak to Vice Mayor Coker's comment about letting people do what they would like to do with their property. I 100% agree. I think it's noteworthy, though, in this instance, they are the owner with rights to develop it in a certain manner. This is not something to which they are entitled. This is a complete rezoning of the parcel. So I just want to make clear that it's not that we're prohibiting them from doing something that otherwise they, such as a special use, that they would be permitted to do.
Well, and I'm just going to make a couple comments. I think that one of the things that obviously all of us are wanting to do in our city is try to grow it in a fashion that will meet the needs of the future. And I believe that when this property was put in the current zoning what it is, we never anticipated, and I would have never anticipated, that that would be a walkable area with the road system around it. Like you said, you made a statement that could probably go on either side of it. You saw people trying to walk across the street. Well, that's crazy. Or, is it going to be walkable? Are we going to work with DOT, with the new transportation opportunities to maybe put a skywalk across it for people, or are we going to do it? And some of that is opportunity, and is that, and like we talked with the transportation on, and the opportunity to make that corridor different, is it 20, 30, 40 years from now, the way the DOT and the MPO works in its structure. And we see that works in 20, 30-year cycles. So again, I hope most of us are around. I don't think most of us would be up here when that happens, but we've got to start that.
I think you've made it clear you don't think I'll be here, so it's all good.
I'm sorry. Well, when you said in the 50s when we were talking about things, no, and again, we all are going to have times when we like or dislike something, but it's also about what's that next step to take us to a opportunity to clean up, to do something, and it may not be the exact thing you like. In the perfect world, we'd get a lot of different stuff. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have any traffic issues here. In a perfect world, I love when we look at these things and they say you can put a cemetery or a funeral home there, and it's like, well, I never saw that before, but I see it now. And, you know, would we want that there? You know, I mean, again, I'm not saying right or wrong, but, you know, this was one of the things that was a concern to me was about traffic. Well, in reality, this is probably the least traffic compared to some of those other uses that would be there. So, you know, it's something that, you know, like I said, in a perfect world, all I hear about on Manatee Avenue is storage places and car washes. Most of them have by right to do. This one is an opportunity to possibly clean up an area and fix a problem that we caused. And I say we in general, not anyone specific, but when we've corrected that now, that when cars back up on 301, that is a huge issue. And you see that on a consistent basis. So, you know, as opportunity, Ms. Singer, you had something you might want to say?
Yeah, and I apologize for the interruption on deliberations, but when we talk about the comp plan change, the anticipated use at that time was a drive-through restaurant. So it wasn't that we didn't change, it was already a process for that in the T5 district. So we were changing the comp plan because it had a prohibition on that use. It didn't have a prohibition on car washes, so we didn't have to address that. But I don't think car wash was mentioned until we were about at second reading, and it wasn't, you know, specifically, you know, I think somebody asked, are car washes allowed? And we said at the time that in T5 that they were not. Now, you could, as an alternative, and rather than rezone the property, change the code to make car washes a special use in the T5 district. That's another way to go, that city council could initiate that, and then you'd have the opportunity to see that project. However, note that if you do make it a special use, then anywhere in the T5, somebody could apply for it, not to say that you have to grant it, but anywhere in the T5, somebody could request a car wash through the special use process. But I'm just putting that out there. It's another alternative if the concern is that you want to see the project to review it.
So what does that mean for where we are right now?
It means that you could, I don't know, table. Could they table this ordinance? No, they have to make you have to make a decision on the ordinance. So potentially you would be denying this ordinance for the rezone. And then you could direct staff to come back with a text amendment to make car washes a special use in the T5 district.
Thoughts, comments, questions? Yes, Ms. Barnaby.
Mr. Rudisil, would you like to opine on
which
what
part?
Well, how about all of it, sir?
Can the applicant withdraw?
Well, there are several options on the table. I mean, I'm not totally sure I know where the council's headed at this point. If the concern is the other uses that are allowed in the SD, then, excuse me, then yes, I think there's an opportunity if the council indicated that they wanted to amend the code to allow for car washes, but not for these other uses in the T5, then the applicant could either withdraw their application or ask for continuance until until the city went through that process. Yes, that would be an option if that's the concern of the council.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess I'm sitting here thinking that we know we have an ongoing issue with the Starbucks and the traffic that it creates. And we have someone here in front of us saying that they're going to pretty much fix that on their own dime. So I'm weighing that with the other concerns that anyone may have. So I'm just sharing that.
Ms. Coachman?
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Barnaby, I'm pretty much on that same vein. I've been wanting to say, oh my goodness, if this could help fix Starbucks, I would start going back. But I am concerned about changing the zoning to SD because should the car wash fail, oh my goodness, the sky almost is the limit. And we can't prohibit an owner from doing what they choose to do, but one way we could would be to make car washes allowable under the other zoning. So I'm kind of there right now.
Ms. Moore?
I was going to comment to say that it's not even just if the car wash fails, it's upon a sale. If there was a new person and they can just do whatever they want in SD.
Right.
I had a question about if the applicant considered continuing or withdrawing the application, and then we had a discussion with staff about potentially including this as a special use. Does that afford us flexibility to add stipulations that require some traffic mitigation in connection with the Starbucks? And where does that take us as far as perpetuity?
Yeah, if something is made a special use, you can put conditions on that special use. You can make requests.
How long does that special use then is permitted in the future without any?
Yeah, once you have that approval, as long as you abide by all the conditions, it would say, so for example, if you put in some traffic mitigation standards and signage and some other things, even if they sell it, that use runs with the property, but with all the stipulations that city council put on it. So they'd have to maintain the signage, the traffic controls that are put in place at city council's direction.
And I think we also have in there, if it closes for more than 12 months, they lose and there's some stipulations in there.
Right, if you close for 12 months or more, it's a little different because it's not a non-conformity per se. It's a special use, but I think there's provisions for special uses that they do have to remain effective and otherwise potentially come back for another reapproval. Now, we could, expedite things for the petitioner if they chose to do so, where they could kind of right along in the process apply for the special use at the same time we're processing the text amendment. So it wouldn't provide for additional holdup for them to then apply at the end of the text amendment. But not to say that you're committing to the text amendment. You still have the right to deny that when it comes through.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
if I could just follow up on that. They would be required to go through the special use process, which means they'll come before the council with a site plan for approval. And the council at that time can look at traffic impacts and design of their site plan and things like that. But I do want to be clear, we can't require them to fix Starbucks.
No.
They have to mitigate their own impacts, and to the extent that they work with Starbucks to try to make a better situation there, probably be better for both property owners, and I'm sure the council would look favorably on that, but we can't require them to fix the adjoining property owner.
And I wouldn't say we are requiring them to, we're just like, suggest, kumbaya.
The applicant brought it forward himself.
He did, yeah.
We did not require it. The applicant volunteered that.
Correct.
I just have one more question, although I'm feeling like I'm going to, if we went the text amendment route, I presume that we're not just talking about this parcel, we're talking about amending the text so that anyone in this zoning could apply for a special permit or special use for automotive or just the car wash?
Car wash, I think
Car
we
wash
specifically
specifically.
listed as a use.
So just, anyone can.
Anyone in the T5, in that
Right.
district. But again, it's a public hearing process. It's not to say that you have to approve it.
Okay, that's true.
But if they meet the criteria, potentially,
I think in that area, and there's been a couple of things over the years that in the council part of it that I was involved in, that sometimes it's the business world dictates what goes where, when, and how, and obviously a business owner isn't going to want to put something that's going to fail. So they're going to fight for it to succeed. And sometimes it's market. The market is what the market is and the timing of what it is. And I totally agree that we've got to look at, time frames down the road, what to make better. But sometimes, you're in certain areas, you hope things happen that probably aren't. And again, we're the group up here that gets at this moment to decide, but we also have got to let the business world decide what can be successful, because I'd love to have a Publix downtown. Publix does the most research to find out if they're going to be successful. And I'm saying that because go out in Ellington, and within 1 mile of each other, they have 2 Publixes. Well, you'd think from a business standpoint, that wouldn't work. But they know their demographics around that, and those are 2 of the most successful Publixes in Manatee County because of the business world. So right now, Publix must not think we're that ready for it, but I think we will be. But I think there's opportunity to have a win-win situation here. And, you know, I see the applicant wanting to get up and maybe say a word.
I have one question for Robin, though.
Okay. Oh, Robin, Josh, Mr. Kramer, thank you.
Thank you. Would this have to go back in front of the planning commission if we vote no today with the text amendments coming?
Yeah, text amendment is a separate petition, so that and the special use have to go through the planning commission
Okay.
before, on their way to city council. And that's why I'm saying we can kind of help things along if they
Right.
kind of proceed at the
Okay.
same time.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Galvano.
Thank you for your comments. So we've been at this a long time, and you know, I've been in politics a while, and you've got what's on the code and the paper, but we're humans too. And this is my community as well. And I know what the goal is here. I think we've discussed too much what this area looks like. You know, every business down the way, the storage, the bins across the way. And so that's got us all here today. We're committed to propose under the SD, the proposal for the car wash. Yes, I did bring forward on behalf of the client that we're also going to look at how we can help directionally with Starbucks. And I'm going to ask that either move forward and vote up or down, because special use, it's not something I could advise to go back to square one on. I think we know where we are. We've discussed this, and I ask for your consideration. And I'll get my notebook.
Thank you. All right,
Have we closed the public hearing?
yeah, we're out of the public hearing. We're back into this
All right.
rebuttal from our staff and that, so. All right, so the chair will entertain a motion.
In the interest of getting a vote going.
Ms. Coker?
Thanks. Did we get a recommended motion? Nope.
Just the recommendation either to approve or not approve. Ordinance 4012.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 4012.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second it.
All right, approve. Any further discussion? All right, we'll start the vote in Ward 2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
No.
5,
Yes.
and 1.
Yes.
Passes 4-1. Thank you very much. All right, Madam Clerk?
The next item on the agenda is the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 4013, an ordinance of the city of Bradenton, Florida, amending chapter 26, article 2, section 26-38, disaster emergencies, council responsibility, to allow the mayor or vice mayor to declare a disaster emergency and issue emergency orders in the event the quorum of the city council cannot be attained in person within a reasonable time, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Any other comments on this, Mr. Perry?
No, sir, I think I explained it last time
Okay.
as far as
Yeah,
what we're
we
trying
had
to
a
do.
good discussion about it last time.
Stand for any questions.
All right, any questions from the council? Hearing none, we'll open the public hearing. Open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance 4013.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Barnaby, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
1,
Yes.
and 2.
Yes.
Approved 5-0. We're going to take what time is it right now? It's 9:35. Let's take a recess till 9:45. Thank you. Come out of recess. Call the meeting back to order. Madam Clerk?
The next item on the agenda is a presentation from Public Works. New business? New business?
We're
That's
ready
okay.
for you.
Good morning, Jim McClellan, Director of Public Works and Utilities. It's not really a presentation. This is really more just, we have had a bid for our fourth clarifier at the wastewater treatment plant. We have a letter of recommendation from our consultants for award of the contract. It needs to be a conditional award because concurrent with this meeting today, the SRF committee is meeting in Tallahassee that will approve our project for funding. So we're making approval of the award of the contract contingent upon the SRF approval of the funding that is
Tell us
occurring.
what SRF is.
SRF is a state revolving fund that is provided through the Department of Environmental Protection. It provides low interest loans for infrastructure projects related to water and wastewater. And I didn't feel comfortable putting a $15 million item on a consent agenda. So,
Any questions? I know you've all been briefed and opportunity to talk about it with Mr. Perry. And Jim, if you needed him, Mr. Perry?
Mayor, if I could just.
Pull that close to you.
Council may remember that we did an assessment, Jones Edmonds, of our entire water utility, and the three components of it being the collection system itself, sanitary sewer, which involves pipe relining, manhole rebuilding, and a whole host of other things to eliminate I&I and have a good sanitary sewer system. We've engaged in that. We have the Waterkeepers lawsuit that's related to that. The second part of the water utility is the water treatment, which this deals with. It's Clarifier 4. And specifically, what this will do as far as a programmatic capacity is allow us, when we do have a lot of volume that comes through, to basically shut down one screen at a time and clean it. Right now, one of the reasons why we have to do discharges is we have to shut down the entire plant.
just the filters.
The filters to the plant, right. And so, but the filters, kind of important to a water treatment plant. Yes, there's three phases of water treatment. I won't get into that. But this allows us to basically shut one down at a time and still maintain capacity on the other filters and continue to process the water for full treatment. The last component that we talked about was the injection technology. So this is one of the three components about slaying the utility dragon, in what I call it, for the long term. And what I mean by that is probably setting the system up for the next 30 years or so, and maybe longer. The pipe relining programs, I think, have guarantees of, 40, 50 years?
50 years.
50 years on the pipe relining and the like. And we have a system that has, I think it's 61 miles or so of.
Yeah, so we're in the process of lining roughly 60 miles of gravity sewer mains throughout the city. We are about a third of the way through that volume. So basically, we're attacking the problem from two sides. We're reducing the amount of flow that can come to the plant by sealing up the pipes and preventing groundwater from coming into the plant, but also building a clarifier that provides additional wet weather capacity to handle things up to the capacity of the filters, which is 20 million gallons per day. The plant is rated for 9 million gallons a day.
And that's why he's an engineer and I'm a city manager, but because he explains it better. That all being said, it's part of that what we kind of approached you guys saying estimated cost was about 45 million thereabouts, but we do receive, as we did this year, funding from the state to do some of the sewer relining and the lift stations and generators associated with that and the like. So we don't know what that total number will be overall. We do believe that we have the financial capacity on the income statements, the balance sheets and things like that to clearly fund this undertaking, all three projects basically. This is a major one of the three because it's $16 million. I would just add that there's an interesting historical precept to this, to the extent that this is the second time we bid the project. The first time we bid the project, even though several contractors, and this is heavy civil engineering, you know, it's a very sophisticated type of contractor that does this kind of work. Even though several contractors to do this kind of work had come to the pre-bid conferences, we only received one bid. And it was about $5 million more than what we anticipated it to be. We were expecting about $9 million or so, and it came in, I think, at, I don't know, 15.8 or something like that.
15.3.
15.3. And lo and behold, this project was bid, and 3 bids came back, and this was the lowest bid at 16.
Well, it's 15.9.
15.9.
Yeah.
Yep, almost 16 million. So that's what the inflation, construction inflation cost. We estimated the cost at about 9 million, came in at 16, and that's competitive with 3 bidders on the RFP basis. And just as it relates to the SRF revolving fund, that is funded at several different meetings of the year because there's a state appropriation that goes to SRF, and they have to figure out what their allocation is, and then they prioritize what the projects are and make the money available to different local governments and through their administration. This is about a 3.1% finance rate that we get, which is very competitive in today's marketplace of interest rates. And again, we believe that we clearly have the room within our rate to pay for any debt service associated with it, and this contract is subject to the SRF approval that I believe is today, actually, up in Tallahassee. They'll be taking a look at our paperwork. Jim and I have had several meetings with SRF, phone conversations with our project managers and folks up there, and our lobbyists, so the folks that say, oh, lobbyists you should do more, or they're not doing enough, whatever. They've actually helped us with that relationship with SRF as well. So that's where we're at.
Well, the lobbyists have more than paid for the small amount we pay them each year with the millions of dollars we've got back.
Tremendous return on investment.
Right. So, Mr. Perry, my question is, how is this money paid back?
The money is paid back through the enterprise itself. Roughly, our water utility is about a $31 million enterprise currently. And compared to other utilities, solid waste is, I think, about 11 or 12, thereabouts. And this utility, like all utilities, has operating cost. And the operating cost for equipment, chemicals, supplies, labor has a certain component. I think it's about 19 million or so on that side. But then we have debt service for other projects that Jim had been building, and prior directors too, that are on our books through SRF to build the infrastructure that's necessary. And so you have that in addition to the operating costs, you have debt service and other associated costs. But we have a margin in there for capital expenditures because, like any large utility or any large business at all, we sell water, and we have to buy equipment that produces potable water, as well as source services, sanitary source services. So the money's paid back within the utility itself, not general fund. It's paid back specifically through the rate.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
What's the term? I'm sorry if I missed it. How long do we have?
It's a 20-year loan.
Okay.
Any other questions? Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I move for the conditional, let me make sure I word this correctly. The conditional award to Poole and Kent Company of Florida pending the Florida Department of Environmental Protection State Revolving Fund approval of the project for funding.
Second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3.
Yes.
All right, approved
Thank you.
unanimously. Thank you, Mr. McClellan. Mr. Perry. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm before you to discuss the retiree health insurance program that we have and the overall impact on city finances, and we have a proposal. I think I have to give you some background information to explain a little bit about what we have with the retiree health insurance program. So the short version here is that we're proposing some changes to fiscal year 2024, the upcoming FY. We run an insurance program. We run an insurance program for our active employees, and we run an insurance program for our retirees. The interesting thing about our insurance program, when you run any insurance program, is you have to cover your cost of claims, i.e. casualty loss. You have to cover your administrative costs to run the program. We use TPA, third-party administrator, the Florida Blue. And then you have to cover your costs that are associated with additional overinsurance, which is called excess coverage, also referred to as stop loss. If we have large claims for oncology, things like that, they could exceed $250,000, $275,000. We have excess coverage for that stuff because we can't have enough in our reserves to go uncovered. That's what we have to pay for. It's interesting because in order to be eligible for retiree health benefits, you have to work for the city for 20 years. And then you would get a stipend, basically. Interesting, because we have these cost of insurance to run the program, but we also provide a stipend. And that stipend is basically, it's a variety of different payments that are made to retirees in order to pay their insurance premiums. It has been a hodgepodge of different stipends and processes of stipends over the years. I'll give you an example. Firefighters from a longer period ago that retire are capped at 8%. Their insurance cannot go up more than 8% per year, so that anything that's in excess of that for our cost of coverage of claims, stop loss and administration, it's 8%. And they don't get a stipend, I think. They get the 8% limit. Then other employees get a $300, and some of it's sliding scale on how long they work for the city. They get a $300 stipend in order to pay. If they had a $500 insurance cost, then we give them the $300. Another group of firefighters gets $450 to $500 stipend. And so we're doing two things for our retirees. We're giving them money to pay their premiums, and we're running the insurance program. Now we get into what the problem is. And I appreciate the work of current and prior counselors that are on the insurance committee, and this may be a little bit redundant for you all, but I think it's worth kind of covering.
Can you blow it up?
Yeah, I'm going to have to blow this up. If the clerk could.
Sure, go, Ms. Coker.
Mr. Perry? Just so I'm understanding, so we're giving them money to give us money?
That's a good way to look at it.
Okay.
I think, and I'll make a comment to that also, Ms. Coker. One of the things that I think the city did early on, years ago, when our pay was very, very low, and one of the benefits was the insurance if you worked 20-plus years. So when you really look at the picture from many years ago, the city, at that point, I think said, city council and the government part of it said, let's try to help the employees that may not have a huge pension, so by offsetting some of the insurance. And Mr. Perry and Mr. Williams are going to go over about retirees, because you could start at 20 and retire at 40, and you have 20 years. Well, you're not anywhere near Medicare age, so the city then has to pick that up for 25 years before, and the insurance. And obviously, we know, and every one of us know, probably more than any of us, Miss Barnaby, that you go to the doctor more when you get older. So, I'm sorry, when you said 1950 today, I had to bring that in. I'm going to get paid back for that. I know. Oh, you look much younger. So. Not to make light of anything that we're doing, but no. But on a serious note, this is very important. I know Ms. Barnaby has sat on the insurance committee. Now Mr. Kramer and I are. But it is something that I've lost sleep over. I know others of you have lost sleep over, Mr. Perry, trying to do what's right for our employees that gave their life to us for a long time, but also to not have the fund to go bankrupt. And it's very important. And as we know, one of the things you'll probably go through is, when you talk about firefighters, police officers, and other employees, there's 3 different unions. So the unions have negotiated things over the years, and one moment, that may have been a negotiation point. At another moment, it wasn't. So it's something when you looked from the oldest person we have on the retirement to the newest one coming on now, you have to make a plan. And I think that's what's important. And it's not about saying, we're going to raise your fees. We're going to try to work within a process to make this fund sustainable long-term.
Correct. That's a good overview. And just for some factoids, there's 179 total retirees that are on that receive a health care benefit. So I also want to point out one other thing that Councilwoman Coker had asked about. She said, so we pay the retirees money to pay us for the insurance, which is true. So does Florida Retirement System. That's an additional stipend that is done the same way by the state. They have a sliding scale as well, and the maximum I think they pay was $150 up to this year, but they've also increased it at the state legislature to $209, as was explained to me by the councilman and Chief Gallo yesterday. With that good news is that they've increased that actually to $209 as a maximum benefit. So I want to kind of explain to you a little bit about what the problem is, and I hope this spreadsheet does it. The short version is that for this pool of employees, the 179, we have $1.9 million in claims. That's how much it is that they have, their doctors and healthcare providers we've paid on their benefit. That's $1.9 million. You'll see that as a handwritten note on the upper right-hand side. We have an administrative cost to pay Florida Blue, to process the claims, to use the TPA, and to pay for the excess coverage of about $400,000 a year. And so if you add the claims cost at $1.9 million and the $400,000, it's probably closer to $600,000 this current year, but we're proposing it to be reduced down. If you add them together, it's about a $2.5 million problem that we have that we have to fund. And that's okay because we get money back from the employees that we give money to, and that's their insurance cost. And you'll see basically that on that chart on the FY23, that's current year. And there's a variety of different plans on the left-hand category of the plan type itself. There's PPOs, there's HMOs, there's HSAs, and there's the family plan, the individual plan. And if you look at the second to right column, you'll see how many of our participants are in each category for the total of the 179. And they use a variety of different plans. And so your cost with your plan is different for every plan. But what you will see is that the retirees' cost, using the first example of the PPO, I think it's employee-only plan, right, is $489. Now, again, we give the employee money, and maybe they get money from the state too if they're FRS retirement benefit. But the true cost to the city of that plan is $729. That middle issue, that's what it's estimated to be next year, $729. And so what we are proposing is an adjustment. We are out a significant amount of money in having to cover that administrative and stop-loss cost that if you were in a different insurance program and it wasn't the city, that would be included in your overall health care costs. But here, we've been picking it up, as we have for employees themselves, active employees. This is the issue that came up on the healthcare committee this year and why we made the changes. We have to somehow cost share in that. And to this extent, we're proposing to cost share. And so for that employee, that is, and there's 82 of them that are just the employee themselves on a PPO, their retiree cost would go from $459, to $611.
459 or 489?
It's 489. My eyes are tired and old as well. That being said, there is this cost share. At the end of the day, Well, I mean, if you look, further, we're gonna have to do something for FY '25 too. But the column on the right-hand side, bottom, shows what that is on a monthly cost to the city and ultimately an annualized cost. Even with that adjustment, it's $423,000 that the city's paying of the total healthcare cost. And that is not including the money that we pay the employees through stipend. That does not include that they pay back to us. So the short version of that is that's the kind of the problem that we're trying to address, and we're addressing it by increasing the cost share to the employees and trying to absorb some of that ourselves. I mean, we'll absorb $423,000 still under the current proposal. I want to talk about a couple of things, so I'm going to have to take this off unless you have any questions on this. Madam Vice Mayor, I think there's a question.
I have a quick question.
Oh.
Yeah, that's, you're fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is helpful as far as the numbers. Can you talk a little bit about the current health of the plan? So how does it grow? And then are we talking about trying to, I guess, race to not getting it below zero? Is that where we're?
Sure. Let me take a stab at that one. Madam Vice Mayor, Councilwoman Gonzalez-Moore. Every year we have an actuary, and it's more, I think, Florida Blue that does this probably, and they look at the plan's cost as it relates to casualty claims. How many claims has the claim number gone up? And they say, you're going to have to put more money into your reserve fund, into your fund balance, because that's what kind of causes the problem from an accounting perspective, is the fund balance going up or coming down. And healthcare cost and claim cost has gone up. There's no doubt about that. Certainly on the employee side, I know what the numbers are. On the retiree side, I don't know exactly what they are, but I feel fairly safe that they've gone up significantly. So that's kind of how you make a determination, because that's the majority of cost of the insurance. And then the second part of your question was, what do we do to close that gap in the future, I think. Is that what the question was? I think we're going to have to look at different options that are available. And that gets into, this gets more complicated, because here's one of the situations is that, employees that are coming up, they may not be eligible for Medicare. Actually, 54% of our retirees are Medicare eligible, and they currently use the city's insurance as a supplemental options to Medicare. That's a really expensive supplement, that if you actually just took your stipend, you got on Medicare. Remember, Medicare, we've all paid it throughout our life on our contributions, a Medicare deal. And really, if you got on Medicare, then we don't have the casualty loss. We don't have the cost of your claims, because CMS, as the administrator, is paying it through the federal system, the federal Medicare system. And so what happens is, even the ones that get on Medicare stay on ours to use as a secondary plan. But the reality is it's a very costly plan. So we want to encourage them to basically get a Medicare supplement, either in the private market or through Florida Blue, or however it is. It would have a significant impact on our overall cost. And I know Mayor is really up on this and explains it quite well. I just want to move on to, because it's a great segue into the options of what we're trying to do.
Right, well, let me just say, to go into it, one of the things that we've discussed at length, not only on the insurance committee, but also with the staff, trying to come up with a way that, it is not going to just jump. We want our, whether it's through Brown & Brown, whether it's through Florida Blue resources, but to say, hey, is there a option out there that is also equivalent with a Part B, C, or D? I'm not 100% sure on those, but I know there was times when you could actually be paying less money than your supplement and have better insurance through Medicare. And one of the things we were happy to find out yesterday is that all of our retirees, at one point, they were not all of Medicare age and on Medicare. They were using our policy as the main policy. So we were happy to see that over the last couple of years, I think when that was discussed, it did transfer in. Once you hit Medicare age, you go to it. I think, as Nilsa would say, now there's policies that you have to, where before there wasn't. So this has been really trying to make it what's beneficial to the retiree as well as the city, to make it where we will work with that employee to make it easy, because, you know, the professionals, Brown and Brown, Florida Blue people, know what they're doing. You know, you call and they say, well, you have these 3 plans, decide. You know, and if you pick A, you're gonna save money. If you pick C, it may cost you money, but you don't know. You know, so it has been very important to try to figure and these guys, through the whole staff, has done a great job at coming up with options. So I think that's.
Yeah, Linda and Mary on the budget side have done a really good job of breaking this stuff down, trying to find the data and the numbers, and then Lance trying to analyze it and me trying to articulate it and otherwise. You know what's interesting about that too, Mayor and Council, is that, so, you know, we have employees, I don't want to name names, and I won't, but they stay on the plan, and it costs them more to stay on our plan in their premium than it would to go get a Medicare Part B supplement. And one of the guys that did all the finance for the city, who is really, really efficient with accounting, in my opinion, no, he's like, why would I ever stay on the city plan? It costs me more to stay on it. If I go to Medicare, I get that their cost of claims, and the only thing I'm using you guys for is a supplement, but that supplement costs me twice as much through the city plan as it would if I went to the private market. But that gets down to what Mayor was saying as far as communications and education on it. And so one of the reasons why we have it on the agenda today is that we're having the employee open enrollment basically coming up in August. And we have to be able to articulate and engage in that educational piece during the open enrollment period, because sometimes you can only make those changes, you really can, during the open enrollment, unless there's a qualifying event otherwise. And so that's why we need it done today. If you look at this slide, which talks about communicating options, it does deal with providing education and through the open enrollment process and otherwise with employees discussing those possible lower cost healthcare options. We're going to have Teams and Zoom meetings. I will have representatives from, I believe, Florida Blue, and so I think maybe even Medicare, Brown and Brown, and their Medicare specialists from Florida Blue at open enrollment to try to get folks to see that there may be a better option for them, both in terms of the coverage as well as in terms of the cost of the coverage. The last point I want to make is that Florida statute, basically 112.0801, states that retirees and their eligible dependents shall be offered the same health and hospitalization insurance coverage as is offered to active employees at a premium cost of no more than the premium cost applicable to active employees. And we're just asking to basically, if you remember, we changed it to the 75-25 split for the active employees, and I think the law requires us to probably do the same for retirees. And I'll turn it over to Lance if he wants to make any closing comments. I will be asking for a motion to adopt this proposal.
Yeah, Lance Williams, the Finance Director. I think Mr. Perry covered everything pretty accurately. I think the biggest thing is people, regardless of your age, don't like change, right? This is what I'm used to. This is a plan I've had for years. Why would I ever want to change? This is what I know. Well, what we're trying to do now, and you know, with the help of Nilsa and Shamika as well, it truly has been a team effort, is to find out what can we do? What can we offer our retirees to say, listen, we want to give you better options. I know that you're comfortable with this plan, but it actually costs you more money. It doesn't give you what you actually deserve or could benefit from. And that takes a conversation, a one-on-one conversation. That's not something we can just apply blanketly across the entire retiree class. So what we've done, and our agent of record, Brown & Brown, has been phenomenal with us from start to finish through our whole insurance process, and along with our third-party administrator, Florida Blue, is we're actually going to make ourselves available as much as we possibly can specifically for retirees. We already do that for our active employees, and we're not changing any of that. But what we want to do is make ourselves more available for our retirees to say, hey, listen, sit down with us, sit down with the experts, talk through your situation, and let them present to you what maybe some better options are for you. And so what we've done is come up with a plan of having specifically 5 meetings for retirees. Obviously, they have the health fairs available. We understand that some of our retirees no longer live in Florida. So we could do Zoom calls, we could do, Teams calls, anything to be able to communicate with them what some of their best options are. The long and short of it is the state allows us, and really the statute states that the retirees bear the entire cost of the health insurance. We all know it's going up. It's going up for everybody. And what we've done as the city is say, listen, we're not just going to be like, okay, we're going to pull the blanket away and here's your cost and it's going up substantially. We're actually willing to bear a little bit of that cost, but the trend is at some point the retirees are going to cover the cost at 100%. But that doesn't mean it's going to cost them more necessarily. So they need to be educated, understand what options are available, and that's what we're trying to do in conjunction with the motion today. So we're gonna move retirees the same as we did our active employees currently.
So is there any other questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Was it considered and is it feasible to have the change for the retirees on a going forward basis? In other words, leave it intact for the 182, but then as people begin to retire, then the change goes into effect, or was that cost prohibited?
Yeah, the cost to do that would be substantial. Right now, again, we have retirees that are Medicare eligible, that are on Medicare, using our health care plan as a supplement. And the reason they do that is because, one, we give them the stipend. Two, it doesn't cost them as much because the city's bearing a lot of that cost. So it's really kind of twofold. We're giving them money and we're also taking away a lot of the cost. We cannot continue. That's not sustainable for us. If the claims were much less than what they were, as in years in past, that's a different conversation. But that's not the case today. Our claims are substantial, and we have to look at not only the active employees, but the retirees as well, and that total cost to the city as a whole. So to say just, as retirees come on board to be retired, is that something that's sustainable? It's not. And so these are changes that we need to make as we're making with active employees as well.
As a follow-up question?
Sure.
When we looked at the first chart and we compared fiscal year 23 to 24, is it safe to say that the complication of, having the supplements and Medicare, but is it safe to say that cost is, a real cost of, is it safe to say, okay, the difference for the employee with a spouse is $300?
Correct.
Okay.
So the example that Mr. Perry used with the PPO for the retiree only, that cost is the exact same cost as the PPO for the employee only. That is the cost of the plan. And so with a retiree, it's a little different because they're actually supposed to bear the cost of the premium of the plan. It hasn't been set up that way. We give the stipend, so it kind of offsets some of that cost. But that is a true cost, and that is a true increase. So for that retiree, they're going from $489, which represents a portion of the cost of the health plan now, to $729 for that exact same plan, which represents the true cost inclusive of claims, admin, stop loss as we're doing with the employee plan as well. So again, we looked at this and we said, okay, well, we could come out of the gate and say, hey, your increase is 49%. But that's not what we want to do. We're not looking to, as the mayor said, these fine people gave their life to the city, provided a lot of great service for the community. So we want to take care of them, but we also want to educate them and let them know, hey, you have options. It doesn't have to be a comfort level of, I've had this plan forever, this is what I'm going to use as my supplement, because at some point in the near future, that supplement's going to cost you a lot more than it really needs to. And that's where the education piece comes in, and really kind of offering them where we took it as a 2-year process versus okay, next year this is what we're doing. We want to have that continual conversation. So some people may stay on this plan and say, hey, I'll pay the increased cost, and that's fine. But we can continue those conversations throughout the year, and maybe they see, okay, yeah, it is. Let me talk to my spouse. Let me talk to my kids. Let me talk to everybody that I trust, my circle, and say, okay, yeah, it is a good idea to go that, and they may make that change then the following year. So Really, the biggest thing is things are changing, and there's no way around it financially. But we want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the decision they're making. If they decide to stay on the plan, that is an option. Just realize what the cost is, and they'll continue to get the stipend at this point. But they need to understand what their options are, when making those decisions.
But for the majority of the Medicare, or people that are on Medicare, they're going to be able to maybe look and say, okay, the city went up this much. If I get a supplement, again, whatever one it is, it's only this much. And we're thinking that it's going to be less from what the professionals are telling us, from the companies. So it gives them an opportunity to still stay lower, and just not be comfortable. And I have a direct relationship with a family member that worked here for a long time that could have gone. His daughter did all the work to my cousin, all the work to say, Dad, it's $149. We're paying the city $249. Oh no, I can't change.
Oh.
So, it's a direct, because it would have been cheaper, $100 a month cheaper, because we were going up 8%. So I saw it, and again, I don't understand it either, because, I've tried to help my mom and dad over the years with it, and it's like, okay, it's Chinese math sometimes. So, Mr. Kramer, did you have something?
Yeah, can you please bring up that first page you had? I think to your point there, Mr. Mayor, one of the things that's always been said is if you leave the plan, you can't come back to it. So that I think it's that idea of you can't return to something that may have been better service-wise for more money. You might be getting what you paid for, type thing. The top there, Insurance Committee, and I believe this council already agreed on the 75-25. I would not say that we need to put on there the retirees will be responsible for in full next year until we can revisit that with the Insurance Committee, number one. Can you go to the next one, please? The next slide. Next slide.
That one we had up before.
The second one. So I and an esteemed former colleague in the way back of the room are both in that category who are not, or family members are not Medicare eligible. And it's not so much mere Tony, I'll call him Tony. It's the guys who came before us who weren't in the union, who didn't make a lot of money, but yet aren't in this category yet. And I think a lot of our lower paid retirees over time who have a great retirement, but also paying the same premiums of someone who's a retired assistant chief of police. It's not apples to apples, there, and I think that's where you're going to see that hit, and probably a lot of complaints on this from the retirees going forward. Very upset complaints from a lot of retirees. The bottom there, research in the city, possibility of the city paying Dial-A-Doc for the next 2 years as an additional resource. I've been asking for that since before I left, but then I could have used Teladoc a week into my retirement and saved me a lot of money while I was traveling. That's something that I thought we were looking at Nilsa in the back there. We're paying for that for retirees now, are we not? Okay.
So that's important.
We need to. We need to pay for Teladoc. It's a relatively low-cost option to the city to pay for 189, I think you said, additional people.
And again, looking for ways to ease any kind of change, that was one of those ways. It's like, what other services could we possibly provide, for a year or 2 years, whatever that case may be. But
right.
Yeah, and you're right. As far as the insurance plan or as the retiree plan goes, it is kind of a hodgepodge of information, and depending on when you retired, there was a before 2012 and after 2012. Some people receive a stipend, some did not.
Right.
Some don't receive a stipend, but they don't go up any higher than 8%.
Right.
And I know Mr. Perry had mentioned firefighters. It's not just firefighters. There is a group of folks that, regardless of what the cost is, they're not going to see any more than an 8% increase. And the idea behind that, from what I've been told historically, is just to your point. The pensions may not have been what they are today. And so an offset to that was, well, we'll help you with the cost of the insurance. we're gonna honor that. I mean, it is what it is. So, those folks have to make the choice to decide if they're gonna make a change or not. But when you look at the total cost of the healthcare, and then again, even if you're not Medicare eligible, that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the best plan for you at the cost. And that's why we wanted to bring in Brown and Brown and Florida Blue and have them work with us to say, hey, let's research your situation. Let them do some of the legwork and heavy lifting, and then come back to us and say, all right, Councilman, we got some choices for you. And it's gonna be, less money, it's gonna be more, stay on the plan you're on, whatever the case may be, but at least you can feel comfortable that you've vetted out your possibilities. But to be able to just stay on the plan because that's what you're comfortable with, and not know what your options are, not know that, hey, I could get the same coverage, maybe for less money, even as a retiree, I think is doing a disservice. And that's what we wanted to make sure that we provided a service to our retirees, just out of respect for what they've done and what they're continuing to do.
As long as what I have has the acupuncture coverage, I'll be fine.
All 26 of them.
People love that.
If there's no further questions or comments, I'd be requesting a motion to basically,
To approve the city
to approve the
retiree health.
retiree health plan proposal.
Is there a motion?
Need maybe some specificity on that.
Sure, let me,
We haven't really gotten
there's
been a lot.
It's actually, I think you pointed out that you wanted to maybe ease into it a little bit and make the adjustment this year, but not do it
Fiscal year
next year.
24.
And I get it, yeah, for fiscal year 24. And that's, I don't want to put so much specificity that if I have to tinker a little bit, but the one that is proposed, that the city's health plan for fiscal year 24 that is proposed by the finance department of increases that capture a portion of the city's healthcare deficit, retiree healthcare deficit, and it's specified in that column 3.
Basically, to mirror what we did with the last meeting. For active employees. Okay. So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
Do,
Yes, ma'am.
do we need to add did you want to make it a firm commitment to pay for the teledoc for the 2 years?
I'd
I
ask,
think we do it for 1 year and
I
then
think they were exploring that.
Okay.
Yeah, if we
But
could
I would,
explore that, we'd
but I would
absolutely-
still say that would
strong.
explore it for 2 years, but 1 year needs to be
It would be
done.
1 year and then what we decide next year.
Right.
Would be,
Exactly. It would be-
keep it going, yeah.
Unless they come forward and say it's,
And Nilsa can correct me.
Not efficient.
It's a 2-year contract.
I think it would
okay.
Oh, okay, so
Then
it
I
would
would
be
be fine with it.
It'd have to be a 2-year.
I would be fine with a 2-year contract.
be fine.
Or maybe they would do a 1 year if we said that's what council wanted to go with until we get final deals.
I mean, we know that doesn't cost us a lot per
Right.
employee.
Yep.
So, but if we don't have anybody using it,
Right.
it's not worth going forward with it. All right, so, okay. All right, so that would be part of the exploration and
Yes.
if it will float in, so. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Kramer and a second by Ms. Barnaby, and
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor,
ma'am.
was the teledoc portion included in the motion
To
Yes.
explore.
to explore?
Explore it,
teledoc,
but
inclusion.
to explore inclusion.
Okay, thank you.
all right, so we've had discussion. We'll start the vote in Ward 5.
Yes.
1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
and 4.
Yes.
Carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thank you.
Mr.
I know it's
Williams?
been difficult on this issue, and we have great employees that have retired and are active, and it's not an easy thing to do. I'd also just like to thank Nilsa and Ms. Standifer from HR for putting together a lot of this. If you remember when this first came up and we said we got to do something about the insurance last year, they did a good job of going to get Brown and Brown, and Danielle's done a good analysis, and we took it to the insurance committee. There's been a lot of work going on. I think everybody's seen that.
And one of the things I think is important to say, if they wouldn't have done, and we bid it out, had opportunity, and we were able to save money from the standpoint of where we were going. If we wouldn't have saved that money, we would have even been farther in the hole. So there was the insurance staff as well as committee did wordsmith it pretty darn good. And I think getting Brown and Brown, no relation, they're out of Sarasota, but getting them on board was well worth the effort to keep Florida Blue Group going forward in a positive way.
And also, if I
Kramer?
could say, some we mentioned at the insurance committee meeting and in the last meeting when we approved it. This was after several years of zero raised by the city to the cost or to the employee, so, with the city absorbing all that.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Kramer. All right, Mr. Perry, any unfinished business?
I don't believe so.
Okay, we'll go to council reports, start in Ward 5.
And I left my council notes. A lot of moving parts right now, a lot of moving parts, or a lot of parts waiting for the green light to go in the money. Whether we're focused on a particular part of the city as opposed to another part, all parts of the city are important. In all parts of the city, whatever is going on, and it impacts the entire city. Last meeting, I think I may have seemed like I was focused on Ward 5. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way you want to see it, a lot of the main arteries of this city run through that part of town. And I think it's important that it looks its best and functions its best so that the entire city is doing well. And with that said, there were some great citizen comments I felt today. Those are definitely issues that are important. We really need to come up with a solution, and if we do, we should share it with the entire country. But there's so much going on, and so much of it is not seen by the public. And, you know, we get this, y'all aren't doing anything, you're not doing anything. Well, a lot of it is just stuff you can't see. A lot is going on when we tear up these roads, you know, and of course we get those complaints, but it's a reason. It's not just to tear them up. Recently, and I think the email was shared with everyone, there was a citizen's concerns about 9th Street. Particularly 9th Street West between 17th Ave and 26th Ave, I believe, and it was about striping. I know there's some plans for that street, so you kind of don't want to do a whole lot until that's done, but Jim, sorry to put you on the spot, but it kind of came to mind.
No, that's perfectly fine. So yes, that is part of what we're calling the baseball study. It's being evaluated. It's $500,000 study being done through the MPO that's going to make recommendations for a multitude of projects to improve both the 9th and the 14th Street corridors. So in lieu of that, we don't want to rebuild the whole roadway. However, we do have funding available in our paving program for this year to go back and do restriping along 9th Street between 17th and 26th. So that is our plan.
All right, thank you, thank you. And it looks great, the striping at 9th Street and 9th in MLK. You know, every now and then, someone still takes advantage of coming over a little bit, but it's so much better to have that definition.
Yeah.
I'm not as afraid now when I go there.
I will tell you that restriping 9th between 17th and 26th won't look quite that good because
Well, I know,
the pavement is
well,
not
it's
brand
not
new,
as
so-
smooth, yeah.
But it will improve
come.
things. and
That
help
will
define
come.
the traffic.
Moving parts, parts, a lot of things in progress. We're back to school. Starting tomorrow, the students will be riding in those buses and waiting at bus stops. So just a reminder to look out for the little darlings, because I would love for them to make it to school so I can see their bright, shiny faces and great attitudes. Let's pray. But that's about it. I'm not going to go into much more specifics. It's just that, you know, it's great doing the business of the city of Bradenton.
Thank you, Ms. Coachman. Ms. Coker?
Thank you. Couple of things in that vein, just kind of following last night, I had the opportunity to go to the Central CRA meeting, and it's always great to hear from the community rather than just sitting here telling them what they want, having them tell us their concerns and what they're looking for. So I was grateful to have that opportunity, and just wanted to say that. And we all get a lot of feedback from people in the community, and I am mostly always glad to hear it. You know, we hope for understanding that things don't happen quickly. And just like the great comments today, I think we've all been feeling a lot of that and hearing about that for a while, and are looking for solutions and working in that direction. I also wanted to applaud, I know there's been a lot of resurfacing downtown on the city streets, and I've been really pleased that they haven't been blocking everything off. You've still been able to make it through. So I don't know if you've seen a lot of issues with traffic downtown, but to be able to do all that and not shut down all the roads has been great. I'm sure it's inconvenient for the workers to have us driving around them, but I'm always glad when we take the consideration not to shut down roads and really harm businesses, because I think that's something that's not always done in every community.
A sidewalk and a road project.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of work going on downtown, so I just appreciate, putting up with the vehicles still riding on them, because that it'd be easier to just shut it down. But anyhow, I want to just applaud y'all for that. Also, my social media is being flooded with all the happy little faces of first days of school, including my grandchildren are starting tomorrow, which brings a little tear to my eye. But I want to wish all the students going back to college, going to school, all the best. These are wonderful years in your lives, and I hope that you make the best of them. And just one last quick thing, with Kiwanis, the Action Club, if you haven't had an opportunity to look into that, they're doing some wonderful things with some of the special adults and special children, and they've got a play coming up. I don't have the date, but I would encourage you to look into that. They're doing some great things over there, and I think that the ripple effects that are going to come from those efforts throughout the community with the Easter seals and everything, I think it's noteworthy. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coker. Ms. Barnaby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too, like everyone up here, has been getting in phone calls and emails dealing with the homeless issue. One of them in particular, people at specific corners panhandling for money, which we know is not legal. And my comment to that is, it's because it's a target-rich environment. People think that they are helping these individuals by giving them money directly, and they are not. If you want to help the homeless, make a donation to one of the approved community agencies that are helping individuals get out of homelessness. Handing money to someone on the side of the road may give you a warm feeling for about 5 minutes, but it is causing a continual issue. And for everyone that calls me to complain about it, if people would stop handing them money, they wouldn't stand there and cause the traffic issue. So I wanted to share that. Mr. McClellan, if I could have you come up for a second. One is, I want to thank you for all of the hard work that has gone into making Lewis Park pretty. I think that every time I go by there to drop my recycling off, there are more people using the park that I had not seen there in the past. And I see individuals using the park that I got an email from someone, or I'm sorry, it was a text message from someone saying that it did their heart good to see a father in a wheelchair being able to play with his children at the playground. So I wanted to thank you and your staff for that. And we had several suggestions made here during citizen comment about the riverfront and what could be done, maybe retrofitting some of the seating areas. Could you share your thoughts with that, please?
Yeah, there's a number of things that we can take a look at. The one aspect related to cutting off the ends of the benches, those are Brazilian hardwood benches that are, I'm not sure we have a saw that could cut them, to be honest with you, but I think a railing system or that would provide definition of seating area, divided up, is something that we could certainly take a look at adding to those in lieu of cutting off the ends of them.
Okay. I would appreciate that, and I think the citizens that were here today would appreciate it as well.
And just to let you know, the folks from Forever Lawn are out at Lewis Park today finishing up the east side swing set, and the surveyors will be out shortly to lay out the final segment of swings that are going to be provided on the west side of the park. And it was indeed our drainage crews who had put a dye into a storm sewer on 2nd Avenue at 33rd Street, trying to define a problem that led to the efflorescent green color of the drainage swale in Lewis Park. It's a biodegradable dye. It is not antifreeze or any other type of contaminant.
It was colorful.
It was very colorful. I'm not saying someone wanted to know if aliens had landed, but yeah, it was very colorful. So thank you. I also want to send my deepest sympathy to the family of Frances F. Davis. She was a fixture in this town for many, many years. Her husband served as the padre with the Hernando de Soto celebration, and she was the lady in the pretty blue house on Manatee Avenue, and she will be deeply missed in this community. And I also want to thank everyone for their expressions of sympathy on the passing of my husband's stepsister. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnaby. Mr. Kramer?
Thank you, sir. Again, school, actually, Bradenton Christian is a half day today. So if you're leaving here and driving near there, please be careful. Manatee Schools, Sarasota Schools, if you're driving in Sarasota, open today. Manatee Schools tomorrow, and then St. Stephen's on Monday. So a little update for that. Roads, thank you very much to the crews downtown for putting the signage out a few days ahead of time saying roads will be being worked on, which I think alleviated some of my neighbors to at least be on the lookout for it. But also the method in which they got everything done was efficient and few disruptions, which again made my neighbors happy. Made me a little happy too. It's good to see good work being done. And it was nice Monday. Last Monday, we all were able to attend the joint meeting of the school board of Manatee County, the county commission, and our body met at the convention center to talk about matters really that we don't get to talk about together too often. So it was nice that we had, I think, was that the first of that kind, Mayor? With everyone, all of us in attendance on that day, which was very nice. And then the next day was the Council of Governments meeting, which is quarterly, but it was well attended by most of the elected officials in county, and a lot of good topics discussed there and updates on a lot of projects. DOT had a good update on the Cortez Road project, or what they call 44th Avenue, which is really Cortez Road, of which we always get blamed for everything because it's called Bradenton. But that stretch, really, we were only responsible for Cortez Road from 43rd to 51st is the only area we actually handle the roadway. Still has trouble there, but not as much as down closer to 14th Street. I'm sorry, Tamiami Trail. So it was good to have an update from the DOT staff on that. And that's about all I've got. Have a great couple weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Ms. Moore?
I already spoke to one of the topics I was going to speak about when I was addressing public comment about the homelessness. I'll just add that the task force, the county task force, is meeting tomorrow. And if you all, I plan to just update the council, regularly from what that's working on. This upcoming meeting tomorrow will be addressing or be providing a discussion about client surveys. So they've been trying to get information from people that use homelessness and homelessness prevention services. So that's on the agenda for that tomorrow. did we move forward with when we had, I'm forgetting his name, but the gentleman David from the Sarasota Bay Estuary?
Dave Tomasco.
Yes. Did we actually take action to move forward with that water testing?
No, we're gonna when Jane goes to next Sarasota Bay meeting, when they're gonna talk about it and kind of
Okay.
bring something back to us.
Okay, great, because I think that it, I know in particular, Vice Mayor is hearing a bunch about it, but I think as long as we're really entertaining a serious look at it, that's the best we can do, and I look forward to hearing all of your ideas about possible solutions to, if it is a problem. And then the final thing I was going to mention was at the joint, I believe it was the first joint government meeting, there was a mention of the potential use of the old City Hall site. And I just thought I would share my thoughts on that with you all, which was that they're very similar to the type of things we were considering for this location. I think I agree with all of the comments from the attendees regarding the traffic mitigation, if that, to the extent that that could be looked at when they get to their process. I should clarify that.
Yeah, because it's not
This is not us.
city.
Right, correct.
We can't
This
tell
was-
somebody else what to do.
Yes.
But we can
We can
encourage, right. yeah.
So I would just like to encourage that. I think several attendees also agreed with that. I agreed with Councilwoman Barnaby's suggestion that the county consider that pocket park idea, that maybe like a sidewalk for public use along the creek. And we are gonna have our workshop, with planning, and I think that will probably also be something that we'll be discussing, we can discuss it more in depth at our upcoming workshop.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mrs. Moore. All right, Saturday, we had a Keep Manatee Beautiful cleanup. It was at our 14th Street old substation for the police department. I know that's a CRA property, so hopefully really fast that building can be torn down, because we saw the unfortunate use of that building now is by some of the homeless, and it's giving them a place to do, and it's getting tagged. So hopefully, with the people that were there, they were also talking about it, and I said that I would mention it, obviously, that's something. I know it's coming, I know the money's there, and we're working through it. So, but I'd like to thank, obviously, everyone that came out that day, but there was a couple of groups that came out. Suncoast, with Cheryl and what she do, working with Keep Manatee Beautiful. That was part of the group that did the aquatic stuff when we did the river. Holland Law Group came out and worked with them. And then Sergeant Palant, Officer Jessica Sarangano, which has been with us 3 years now, and then Officer Kaylee Grunig, I believe it is, close to that, is obviously one of our newer officers. And we worked in that area, and we went down behind the Salvation Army on the street between the Salvation Army and the church. And I've got emails from people that live around there, and I don't know if anybody else has, but that street behind the Salvation Army is really turning into where a lot of people are going and staying, and it's what we talked about this morning with the group that's on Riverwalk. We need to do something, and we're meeting with the Salvation Army tomorrow, because, we've talked about this. We're trying to work through a process. We're gonna try to figure out what we can do, what they can help with, what they should help with, and work with them. So we picked up about 2,000 pounds of trash in that general area on Saturday, which is unbelievable, so we're really trying to work through that. But as we talk with a lot of things, it's about collaboration, what we can do together and work together, not just have a gaslighter and, one thing to try to bring something up and make it bad, but what we can do together. Looking through, school, obviously, we're excited for kids to be back. I have an 8th grader and a 5th grader and grandchildren, so they're the big dogs, and they're parts of the school right now, so they're all excited about that, because it's their last year at that school, moving to the next.
And I will point out that I don't have any grandchildren yet.
There was some comebacks that could come.
Good one.
So, So, and then Lewis Park, obviously, that was obviously dear to Miss Barnaby's heart, mine as well, living right down the street from it for 30 years. It's exciting to see the activity at Lewis Park. And, you know, as we've made the park into more of an ADA handicap accessible, we're also working to make it, you know, for all the neighborhood kids accessible, which is important. And I just, you know, we had the information, interesting first meetings and all that, and I hope that people are realizing that this is a win-win for Lewis Park and the community, and I think they're seeing that now. And sometimes the tough things that we have to do to bring them forward, when it's done, it's like, okay, I like it. And so that's what I'm hearing from people. So I would like every one of our women to get their phones in front of them and look what they're doing in the audience too, everybody. So find out what you're doing on January 22nd through the 28th. Very exciting. People are like, okay, everybody can look at that because it's going to be fun for the whole community. But we just found out that we were awarded an LPGA tournament on those dates at Bradenton Country Club.
Really?
So we were fighting for from the area, some of our bigger courses out east and all of that, and Bradenton Country Club got it. So
January 22nd?
it's January 22nd through the 28th, and it's going to be on, you know, they usually do the Golf Channel on Thursday and Friday, and then some national channels on Saturday and Sunday. So you're going to see Bradenton Country Club in Bradenton, Florida, splashed out. And that's something that I'm proud of this council here and the positiveness that we're seeing in this community right now, that, you know, a major event that, you know, as an economic driver, you know, every one of our hotels in the city of Bradenton will be full, you know, and they'll want to stay here. And, you know, we love our community to the east and our county to the south, but they picked us. And I know Bob Spencer and his group through Bradenton Country Club did a great job. We wrote letters, we did everything we could, tell them about our city, what's going to, you know, so, because they want to know when they go into a city, not only what's going to happen, but also the beautiful Riverwalk, the beautiful stuff. They don't just want to come play golf. The players do, but obviously their families come with them, other people come. So that's very exciting that we got that. At 5:25 this morning, my phone's beeping, and it's like, I was excited. So just great job to that group. And again, collaboration, positiveness, working forward with everybody. You know, we have our sometimes our, you know, things that we work through. You know, I don't want to say disagreements, but things that we work through. And that hasn't always been on this board in the past, especially the most recent past. And now it's an opportunity to move forward with positiveness in our community. So I think that's it. We're going to start with department heads report. I would like Mr. McClellan to come up first. And there's been some things coming in by emails and different things about, you know, some of our streets and things that we're working through. One of the things Mr. Perry and I talked about at one point is trying to come up with something that we can get out where people can look at, you know, and I know we send out when projects are happening and that, but, you know, that when a project is happening and why things are, because, I mean, honestly, if you drive south on 9th of Lecom, that's probably one of our worst streets right now. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's a plan, but how do we get the public to know that there's a plan? And that, you know, again, one of the things when I came in 10 years ago, I asked the questions, and a lot of people got nervous about why, and I finally said, not that I want to change anything, but why do we do this? Why do we do that? And we will go through and we will pave a road, and 3 weeks later come back and tear up part of it to fix something. And sometimes that happens, but that was one thing that I've been impressed with you and your department, that doesn't happen as much. So, but sometimes we have to live through the pain of some potholes and not stripes longer than we would, because we know what's going to happen underneath it. So
correct. So for that stretch of 9th, the water main and the sewer main in that area are ones that are targeted for replacement, and we're trying to coordinate it with what's coming. So when those projects that get approved, or not approved, but proposed through the MPO as part of the baseball study, and again, we specifically mandated to the MPO when they're doing that study, don't come out with a proposal for some $15 million project. Break it up into smaller components that build upon each other so that we can plan for those and work through them and actually have a possibility of them being funded. And when those projects are done, we will coordinate the utility replacements, because the majority of what the potholing, not so much the potholing, but the depressions in the roadway are all associated with the utilities that are out there. And again, our desire is not to spend $100,000 paving a portion of a roadway to then turn around and have it torn up 2 years later. We're basically on a 10-year cycle with paving that we started 10 years ago with a paving program. We picked the low-hanging fruit. We got everything that could be done without having to do utility work. And I recognize that Mr. Green is in the audience, and his street is one that we have targeted for. It wasn't low-hanging fruit. It's one that needs a drainage system. We've got a design pretty much completed for the drainage system. That drainage system plus the pavement, and basically we have to rebuild a portion of that roadway because it doesn't have any base material underneath it. That's actually in an old dump area of the town, an actual dump. And the roadway doesn't have support underneath it. So overall, it's about a $400,000 project with the drainage and the...
That's not the only street that we discovered that about.
Oh, of course,
Because there was some in my ward that we had that.
Oh, absolutely. And, we affectionately at Public Works have little lettering on some of our shirts that nobody can read that says, "We hate everybody who came before us," because they approved some of this stuff that never should have been approved. But in any event, it's out there and we've got to deal with it. So those types of things. So that, that project for 25th is one that we've got on the docket. We're now just trying to line up the funding for. We're looking at our stormwater fees. We think we have a way to be able to generate some more money and maybe be able to do a few extra projects in the coming year that we currently don't have on the docket if those monies come through. So that's what we're planning for.
Good, thank you, I appreciate that. Anything else before we move to the next? You got everything, department head?
I've been sitting over there trying to think of anything else that I have forgotten, but I already mentioned that the folks are out at Lewis Park working on that. And we are in the process of finalizing the resiliency grant. We got a grant to do a resiliency plan for the city. We're waiting for the contract to come back from the state for us to bring forward for you for signature. But as part of that resiliency planning, we will be developing essentially an overall plan for the city related to things such as seawall improvements. Where are the risks associated with the potential for sea level rise and those types of things? We have to have that plan in place before we can apply for additional funding through the resiliency programs at the state for us to do it. The good thing is they funded the project that will create the study and the report that will be used as the basis for those. And if I could, I can embarrass somebody.
Sure.
I want to introduce our utilities section manager, Letitia Smith. Letitia's been with us for about a month. She came to us. Her last work assignment was in the Cayman Islands. She's a licensed wastewater treatment plant operator. She recently has obtained her degree from USF, correct? And she started her career in Public Works working on a patch truck. So she's got the credibility with the staff to be able to talk to them about what it takes to be in the field doing the work, and she's doing a great job for us so far. So
Good.
Just wanted to introduce
Welcome
her.
aboard, thank you. Thank you. Any other department heads? Chief Gear?
I'll try to keep it short. So we were recently awarded a grant from Firehouse Subs for a $40,000 set of rescue tools. This in turn, we're going to be going through a process to get a little recognition for them and do a little press release. So I'll be notifying y'all. Normally, anytime we receive a grant, we have to have permission to accept it. This didn't meet the criteria, but we wanted to make y'all aware that we did not want to turn away this opportunity, and we plan to accept that from Firehouse Subs and Rescue Tools, otherwise known as Jaws of Life, vehicle extrication equipment. So that was good news, and hopefully we'll be accepting that in the next month or two and do an invite for y'all. The other bit of good news that we had was we were able to maintain an ISO Class 2 rating for the community. And there is a ton of work that goes into this, not only by my staff, but different departments in the city. And I know Jim's been up here a ton already, but we had to pull some rabbits out of the hat and make things happen, and I can't thank them enough, including Letitia and Dean and everybody else that assisted us outside the fire department to make that happen. So we'll make sure that we get you all the letter once it's finalized from ISO and Verisk, and that's a big deal for us. Takes a lot of work, so I want to share that good news with you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, that's a big deal for any
That's good.
city, the ISO rating, stay on top of that. And there was some technical issues regarding historical infrastructure and pressures and things like that. But fire did a good job of rectifying the potential downgrade that we were going to receive. And we're going to continue to hold that as a foremost goal to keep that ISO rating up.
Well, that also helps our insurance rates
Indeed
for
it
the
does.
citizens
Yep.
to have all of that and keep that going, so. Any other department heads, anything? All right, anything else for the good of the order? We'll be adjourned, and we'll see you back here at 1 o'clock for the workshop. Thank you.